Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. It's a webinar to tell my story, and not just a story relevant to me, but a story relevant to everyone out there who wishes to study abroad. Now, studying abroad has lots of advantages which I have benefited myself. And after successfully winning so many scholarships, I think I have a significant level of knowledge to share. And that is why we are in this webinar today. So in the next few minutes, we'll discuss how I was able to win 5 scholarships. In many cases, I've won other scholarships aside these 5, but this could be short-term, this could be, some of them are not fully funded scholarships, some are partial scholarships, but I want to share experiences from mainly 5 fully funded scholarships I got all abroad at each point in my life in the past 2 years. So to start with, let's talk about me. Okay, my name is Amaraizu Genius. I'm from Nigeria. And in 2020, I was working with I see some messages. In 2020, I was working for the project Google Digital Skills for Africa back in Abuja, Nigeria. And in February 2020, the pandemic happened and Google shut down operations in Sub-Sahara. So technically, by February in 2020, I was out of job. But before then, I had applied for a scholarship to study in Sweden. Luckily for me, in April, the same year, 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, I got a fully funded scholarship called the Swedish Institute Scholarship for Global Professionals to study in Sweden. And, during the pandemic, there was lockdown, even in my country, Nigeria. But because I know this is an opportunity I should not miss, I joined evacuation flight and I flew to Sweden in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2 years later, I have finished my master's program, but so many other things actually happened within this period of my master's. I got involved in so many different engagements that gave me the testimony of saying, yes, I got 1 master's at a scholarship, 3 fellowships, and 1 PhD. So at the moment, I'm a PhD candidate in a university in the United States, specifically Michigan Technological University. And outside this PhD, and outside the master's scholarship, which I'm done with, I got 3 different fellowships, fully funded, abroad, all international, even while I was in Sweden. The first picture you see here was in front of the Swedish Parliament. There is a picture I took, I think I was with my friend. The second picture was when I was in the World Forum for Democracy in France. This is one of the engagements I was involved with. I was a youth delegate at the 9th World Forum for Democracy, sponsored by the Council of Europe. So I was sponsored by the Council of Europe all the way from Sweden to France to be part of this project. And aside this, I've been involved in so many other ones. The last picture was in Rome, where I went under the invitation of UNERE and the New Women Connector, sponsored by European Union, for the Advocates Exchange Lab. where we discussed issues regarding migration and refugees and the rest of it. So I have a reasonably significant and considerable experiences to share, and that is the purpose of this webinar. How can you win your own fully funded scholarship, be it master's or be it PhD or be it fellowships? How was I able to do it? And how can you do it? Now, when we talk about fully funded, the major concerns will be, what do you refer as fully funded? And when we say partially funded, or when we just say funded, what are we referring to? So for the fully funded, we mean that all the major and basic expenses are covered. And when it comes to academic fully funded scholarships, these are the basic and major funding that you get. Tuition, that's the school fees, monthly allowance, covering all the months you will stay or all the duration of the scholarship, flight and travel, insurance, network, and associations. So when you are looking for a fully funded scholarship, these are the 5 things you look out for. Does it pay your school fees? Does it provide you monthly allowance? How about flight and travel? How about insurance? And is there an association or a network of these scholarship holders? Or is there an alumni? These are very, very important, because the network, for example, gives you the opportunity to meet people of like minds and people who could help you and who you could help in the long run, in the long term, in the future, in your engagement, in your global involvement and dealings. And on the right side of this presentation, you say work study policy and residence permit. You also need to understand the work study policy with regards to your scholarship or with regards to what you wish to apply for, and also the residence permit. When I got the Swedish Institute Scholarship, all these things were covered. All of them, absolutely all of them. The Swedish government pays your school fees, your tuition, gives you monthly allowance of, currently it is 11,000 Swedish krona. That is about 1,000 plus dollars or 1,000 plus euros. You are given a travel allowance depending on the country you're coming from. Sometimes if you're coming from as far as, so for me, I came from Nigeria, I was given about 15,000 Swedish crowns. If you're coming from somewhere closer, it might be 10,000, just depending on the part of the world you're coming from. And of course, I had an insurance covering both home, health, and property insurance. And I belonged to an association, a network called Swedish Institute Network for Global Professionals. And after I graduated from the scholarship, I joined a new network, which is the alumni network. And for Sweden, the work study policy is very, very liberal. Unlike some other places like the US or like Canada or like the UK, you can only work 20 hours per week in these places. But in Sweden, there is no limit. As far as it does not affect your studies, you can work as much as you wish to. And the residence permit of Sweden also gives you the ability to move around. As someone who has the residence permit from Sweden, I'm covered in the whole of European Union, the whole of the Schengen zone. So that means I can travel all through the 26 countries under Schengen, from France to Austria, Hungary, Germany, Norway, Finland, Denmark, name them, about 26 of them, I can travel without a visa or without being checked for that. So when we talk about fully funded scholarship and when we talk about choosing the study destination, these are the factors you need to consider while making your choice. And then we progress to the major part of this discussion. For me to get 5 scholarships, I knew that I needed to be exceptional. For me to be exceptional, I also knew that I needed to engage in strategies that has been proven to have worked. I also knew that I need to engage in strategies that I know that I'm capable of engaging in. And in summary, I have put these strategies, divided them, categorized them into three. And these are the three steps that I employed. The three steps that won me a master's scholarship, the three steps that won me fellowships across the world, the three steps that won me a PhD scholarship. Now, the first is research. The second is something I call accurate action. And the third is follow-up. These three are equally important. No one is more important than the other. They are all equally important. But a major difference is how do you employ research? When do you employ research? How about the action on its own, and how about follow-up? And then briefly, I will touch each of them as brief as possible so that you can understand what I mean by research, accurate action, and follow-up. So that takes us to the next slide. Research as our first step. What does research entail for me? What did I do? Question and answer, Q&A. That is what I did. What program do I want to study? What university do I want to study in? What country? What scholarship? These are questions I asked. And I had to provide myself the answers, not by my thinking, not answers by what I love or what I don't love. I provided myself answers based on research. The biggest mistake scholars or intending scholars, potential scholars make is that they provide the answers based on their feeling. They provide the answers based on what they have always dreamt, and it is not based on research. In bachelor's, I did my bachelor's degree in mass communication. And after finishing my bachelor's degree, I got a job where I worked as a communication strategist. I progressed to work for the Google project. I also progressed to work as a communication consultant for a UK public organization called WFD, Westminster Foundation for Democracy. I was a communication consultant with them. I had all my background in communication, both academically and professionally. But my background was not in broadcast communication. My background was not in journalism. My background was not in all these other parts of communication. My background focused mainly on digital communications and developmental communications. So based on the available data, based on my already existing career growth, bachelor's details, already existing professional experiences, I knew that I have to do a program either in IT or in communications, or at the far end, a program in development or international relations. That was the first part. So I now had to choose a program for my master's. Then I started checking out Swedish universities. I saw the eligible programs for the scholarship, for the Swedish Institute Scholarship, because all programs are not eligible. Then I saw a program in a university, not a popular university, but the university had the program that was a bit unique. The university is called Södertörn University. It's not very popular in Sweden, like the Lund University, or as popular as the Uppsala University or Chalmers or Stockholm University or KTH. It's not as popular as these other universities. But they had a program called Media, Communication, and Cultural Analysis. This is a program that has a fusion of media, has a fusion of communication, and has a fusion of culture and the society. And I told myself, yes, that's my program. That was a product of research. I researched different courses, different universities. Then I checked out the university. I saw, okay, this university is just 26 years old. In Sweden, you see universities that are 200 years old, that are many, many years old. But Sodato University was about 26, 25, or 24 when I applied. And like, this university is pretty young. The population is not large. That means that my class will not be very large. That also means that I will have the maximum attention I need from professors. And that also means that I will have less competition for my academic growth. This is why I chose the university. Then when it comes to country, Nigerians usually want to study in the US, in Canada, in the UK, mainly because we speak English language. How did I come to choose Sweden? I didn't know I knew that Sweden was there as a country, but I didn't know much about Sweden until I saw a publication about the happiest countries in the world, and they listed all the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and the rest, Norway. They are like, oh, let me start. I started checking out Sweden. Then I got to see that there is a scholarship opportunity for Sweden. Then I applied for the scholarship. Of course, I did my research about the scholarship, and I saw that I was qualified, and I applied. So this is how you do research. Now, the very second part of the research, when you found a school, you found a program, you found what you want to do, the very next level of your research should be eligibility. This is as important as the whole application. Eligibility. I want to tell you this. Do not apply for any scholarship or any application at all, or any fellowship or any opportunity that you are not eligible for. Do not do it. That is, unless you are doing it to test maybe your writing ability, or you're doing it to, for yourself, for your own need, unless that. But if that's not the case, do not apply for what you are not eligible for. That would be a waste of time in 90% of the cases. It is only less than 10%. It could be, this is not accurate data, it could be less than 1% where people who are not eligible are taken. Is less than 0.1%. So when you talk about eligibility, you check out citizenship. Oh, I'm from Nigeria. Are Nigerians eligible? Oh, I'm from Ghana. Are Ghanaians eligible? Oh, I'm from Kenya. Are Kenyans eligible? Oh, I'm from Pakistan. Are Pakistanis eligible? I'm from India. I'm from wherever you're from. Check if your country is eligible. Then the second thing is age. How about age? Am I between the age required? For the Swedish Institute Scholarship, which I finished up with for my master's, there are only 40 eligible countries. So if you're not from any of these 40 countries, you can't apply. Applying is a total waste of time. And as for age, once you are above 18 years of age, you are eligible. There's no age limit. If you are, I have friends who are over 45 that got the Swedish Institute Scholarship for master's program, over 45. Even if you check my, if you check my YouTube videos, I will put a link up there. If you check my YouTube videos, there's a video with someone who was my guest, and he was way above 40. And he got the scholarship for a master's program, to tell you that age, as long as you're an adult, age is not a barrier for the Swedish Institute Scholarship. But for many other fellowships, for many other opportunities out there, age might be significant. Then the third thing is experience when it comes to eligibility. You understand what I mean? Your work experience or your leadership experience or whatever experience, check it out. Some of these applications have experience, requirements for experiences, and then grade and language and payment. Talking about language, most opportunities ask you for English proficiency examination certificates. Some ask you for TOEFL, or some ask you for IELTS, or some other, evaluations for language. So make sure that you're eligible in this aspect, and make sure you know the rule that applies. Since I'm already using Swedish Institute as a case study, in language, if you studied for example, if you studied in Nigeria or in African country whose official language is English, you don't need any English certification. But if you're from, let's say, South Sudan, then you need English certificates. If you're from Benin Republic, then you need English certificate. But if you're from Nigeria, you don't need English certificate. If you're from Ghana, you don't need English certificate. So you have to understand the requirements for anything you want to apply for, the eligibility requirements. And then payments. Please, 99% of scholarship opportunities, 99% of fellowship opportunities requires no application payment. If you see application payment required for a scholarship, it is a red flag. Then it means that you need to do more research to know if this is genuine or not. Most scholarships applications are free. You don't have to pay for it. For the Swedish Institute Scholarship, application is free. You make no payment for it. But for you to get a scholarship, you first of all need to get admission. But to get admission, you need to make admission application and you need to pay application fee for admission. So when it comes to the Swedish Institute Scholarship, it is free to apply, no payment. But for you to get a scholarship, you need to get admission. And for you to apply for admission, you need to pay for application fee. Same with PhD. Most PhD scholarship free to apply. But for you to get the PhD, either in Canada or in the US or in the UK or somewhere else, in many cases, you need to pay application fee for admission. But in some other cases, there is no application fee. So your answers are there when you make your research. You have to do this research and you have to do it yourself. So we progress. Okay, still on research. Now, the other part of research is the process. These are things you must do before you start application. You must conclude an actively, carefully done research. Now, the third part of research is the process. What is required in the process? Okay, I've seen this, I've seen that, I'm eligible, I'm this, I'm that. Okay, I now want to start the process of applying. Now, you also need to make your research in this aspect to understand what you might need and what you need to prepare. In many cases, you will be required to present your passport, your international passport, or your national ID documents or identification. So that means that if you don't have an international passport from your country, you should not be searching for scholarships, or you should not be thinking of study abroad. The first thing to do is to go get your international passport ready. When you get your international passport, doesn't mean you're buying a plane ticket to travel. No, get it ready as an ID document. Get your birth certificates ready. Get your national ID cards ready. All those basic ID documents, driver's license, get them ready. Get them down. Then the next thing is certificate. We're talking about your degree certificate if you have done a degree or HND or diploma or whatever certificate you have, academic certificate or high school, primary school, whatever it is, get them ready and down. Transcripts. You need to have your transcripts at hand, your own copy. Even if the application requires you to send the transcript abroad, but you need to have your own copy that belongs to you at hand. Because in many cases, that your own copy can be accepted. In many cases, depending on what you're applying for. For the Swedish Institute Scholarship, it depends where you're from. If you're from Nigeria, you cannot submit your transcript by yourself. Your transcript has to be submitted by your university. If you're from Nigeria and you're applying for the Swedish Institute Scholarship for master's program in Sweden, your transcript needs to be submitted by your university. So that means you need to go to your university, tell your university to submit your transcript to Sweden, and they know how to do that. You don't need to stress yourself on how they'll do it. This university system, they are all connected and they know how to do that. But if you're from Ghana, you can upload your own copy of transcript. Once you have your official transcript, you can upload it. You don't need to send it, all overseas down to Sweden. You can upload it yourself. So you need to check the requirements for the processes, know what is needed and what is not needed. And the other one is your CV. Now, it's also good that you have a CV down. If you are thinking of Europe, you want to go have a scholarship in Europe, be it masters, be it PhD, be it fellowships, they all require CVs, your resume. Please use the Euro CV format. There's an Euro CV. I think I'll put a link in my YouTube for that. There's Euro CV format. There is a standard CV format for Europeans or for Europe use. So you can just follow that template and create your own CV. Have your CV down and ready. And then where we always get more questions is these places, the statement of purpose and motivation, reference letters, essays, proofs, evidences, deadlines. So I won't go deep into how to write this, but I think I will touch a bit of it. Statement of purpose, motivation letter. These things in 99% of applications are needed. And they have a simple question. Why do you want to apply for this? That is usually the same question. And the other question could be, if you get this, what end purpose will it serve you? What purpose is this for you? What is your purpose for applying for this? In many cases, statements of purpose and motivation letter are the same. In other cases, they can be two different things. So depending on the application you're doing, understanding what they ask of you is very important. And where do you make that understanding happen? Through research in the process. If you make your research, make your finding, Google is your friend. When I was dealing with Google, you get to understand how the algorithms work. Google is your friend. There is no question you ask Google today, Google does not have an answer. Even when I was working for the Google Digital Skills Project, we go into the rural areas to tell people and teach people how they can use these digital skills. But for you, who is opportune to be watching this video, you already have access to internet, you already have access to materials. Why can't you use it? Make your research. Google is your friend. Find out what is required for every application you want to do. Get to those who have done it before, and then you get your answer solved. Now, the other one is reference letters. Also, how is this? Who should be your referee? How about if you're not in good terms with your current employer? Would they still make a good referee? How about your former employers? You don't have access to them. How about you were not so close to your lecturers back in the university? Maybe you cannot get a reference letter from them. How do you do it? Doing your research, you find out your answers. It is not all about the answers I give you. It is about the answers you can find during this process of research. Essays, same thing, proofs of an evidence. Sometimes in the applications, you are required to provide evidence. Let's say, if you say you worked in a particular organization, they will tell you to provide evidence of working in that organization. And the evidence will come in form of a letter from that organization. The evidence could also come in front of a legal document from, let's say, a document signed through notary public, or a document from an affidavit or something, depending on the application. And then the very most important parts of this research process is knowing the timelines and deadlines. Before you engage in any scholarship, make an outline of, okay, this starts today and it's going to end on these dates. On these dates, it will be over. You create a timeline that will follow and fit into the deadline. That is the only way you can even succeed at that. And this is all that is involved when it comes to research. So we'll now go over to the second step of what I do and what helped me in winning 5 scholarships, fully funded scholarships all around the world. So the next one, which is our step 2, or which is my step 2, is now taking action, which I call accurate action. One thing is taking an action, and that thing is taking the action rightly, an accurate action. So what do I mean by accurate action? So step 2, I call it application. And this is where you implement everything you've learned from your research. This is where you implement everything possible to ensure that you get this opportunity. You get this master's scholarship, or you get this PhD, or you get this fellowship, or you get this award, or whatever it is that you're applying for. Now, the first step is telling your story. Please, everything I'm sharing here is my own steps, what I did. It doesn't mean that if you do it differently, it will not work. But this is what I did, and it has worked for me 5 times. 1 master's, 1 PhD, 3 fellowships. It has worked for me 5 times. The first thing is telling one story. Now, the truth is that you have so many stories. You have so many stories. Let's say for me, I studied mass communication in the university. When I was in the university as a student, I had a business. So I did entrepreneurship when I was in the university. When I also was in the university, I did politics. I contested to be the president of Students' Union Government, SUG, back in Nigeria. I had experiences in politics. When I was a student, I also did cultural events. I hosted pageant competitions. I hosted most beautiful girl pageant competitions. These things I actually did. These are my story. This is my story. When I graduated from the university, I focused on digital communications. That was my work experience area. Outside my focus on digital communications, I had a social enterprise which I founded, and it's still running today. It's called Breakfast Show. You can check us out, www.breakfastshow.com. Let me do a little advert. So I founded a social enterprise, and this social enterprise is mainly focused on education. So I had experiences in education as well. And then as I grew, I joined networks of other young people. For example, I joined the Young African Leaders Network, Young African Leaders Initiative Network, yearly. And in yearly, we engaged in so many things. We engaged in climate, we engaged in gender equality, we engaged in strong institutions, we engaged in, I had experiences, diverse experiences in environment, in poverty, in hunger, in different things. So when it comes to me, I have lots of stories to tell in application. If I'm writing an application essay, or if I'm writing a motivation letter, or if I'm writing a statement of purpose, I have many stories to tell. But when I was applying for the Swedish Institute Scholarship, I only chose to tell one story. Now, the mistake many people make in applications is that they tell many stories. They tell, oh, one time I did in politics, I was expert in politics, and that time you were an environment climate activist, and at that time you were this, you were that. Some people think it will be an advantage for them. In some cases, yes, it's an advantage. But in my own case, I tell one story. I check out what I'm applying for. Okay, I'm applying for this in education, or I'm applying for this in communication, and I'm applying for this. What one story can I tell in the whole of my application? Then I identify the story I want to tell, and I choose one aspect of the story, and I tell the story. In my essays, it is that story that I maintain. Even if I tell you that let's say I want to tell a story about education and how I am a great supporter of education with 1 million years of experience in education. But I have experience in pageantry, I have experience in climate change or climate action, I have experience in things that are outside education. Now, how do I tell one story? I can say when I was in the university, I was involved in a pageantry organization. And during this period, I ensured the education of the ladies that are participating, training them on current affairs, training them on I can find terms that is associated with training in such an environment of pageantry. During pageantry, we actually train people. We train these girls on culture. We train them on current affairs. Yes, we train them. This is like 7 years ago of my story. So I did pageantry about 6 years ago. But I stopped that. I left that industry. That's by the way. So I can connect that same pageantry experience into education. If I want to talk about climate change or climate action, I can say what we are doing under education for climate. For example, I'm the leader of a social enterprise called Breakfast Show. And in Breakfast Show, we use digital education to preach sustainability. So I can tell a story where we train our kids, or because we mainly focus on young adults, where we train young people on sustainability, where we train them on things they have to do to ensure or support climate actions, to ensure that they are not being agents of destruction of the environment. So even though the story is climate related, I will still find a way to bring it back to education. That is what I mean by telling one story. Telling one story. If someone looks at your application, reads your motivation letter, looks at your CV, looks at your references, looks at every of your history regarding the application, they can let them only see one thing. Let them say this person is an expert in this. Even if you have so many stories, allow them to see one thing, one story. Now, the next part is embracing the UN SDGs. Now, for those of us who don't know what is UN SDGs, United Nations came together some many years ago, and they looked at, after research, they looked at the problems of the world. And they saw that the problems of the world is enormous. But then they decided to categorize these problems of the world, and they set a target. They categorized the problems of the world into what was called MDGs, Millennium Development Goals. This is in the beginning of this century, in the 2000s. They created what is called Millennium Development Goals. And after Millennium Development Goals, when they created Millennium Development Goals, they outlined Goal 1, Goal 2, Goal 3, Goal 4 to the number of goals that were outlined. And they said before 2015, we want to achieve these goals. It became a global push to achieve those goals. Everybody, every organization, every human being who cared about other humans started working towards those goals. By 2015, the world gathered again, or either 2014, the world gathered again, reviewed the Millennium Development Goals. After reviewing it, they found out that there has been massive progress for these goals. But now the target year is 2015, and 2015 is already here. What do we do? Now they created, out of this research, they created new goals, and they called it Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. So SDGs were created by the United Nations, and this goal will run till 2030. And this is 2022. And there are about 17 SDG goals. Goal 1, Goal 2, Goal 3 to 17 goals. And these goals, these SDG goals, they cut across zero hunger, no poverty, good health and well-being, that's Goal 3. Goal 4, quality education. We have Goal 5, Goal 6, cutting across both climate, land, life on land, life in water, strong institutions. There are so many of them, partnerships and the rest. And there are about 17 UN SDG goals. If you are applying to study abroad, if you're applying for a scholarship, if you're applying for fellowship, PhD, master's, 1 month fellowship, 6 months fellowship, 2 months fellowship, 1 week fellowship, whatever you're applying for, any opportunity that you're applying for, and you are looking for funding, you must understand the United Nations SDGs. If you understand the SDGs and use the SDGs to tell your story, use the SDGs to relate it to your CV, to what you do. Let's say you're an accountant. Relate accounting to SDGs. You're a doctor. Relate what you do as a medical professional to SDGs. If you're able to do that, you can win any opportunity. So the step 2 in my application process is to actually directly implement my understanding of the SDGs. Then this also it trickles down to the leadership story. How do you tell your leadership story? You must show leadership. You must tell that story that you're a leader. Whether you are somebody, you are at your workplace, you're an employee, and you have one person you supervise, you're a leader. Tell that story. Let's say you're a Christian and in church, you are a choir leader. You lead a group of people, or a Bible study leader, or whatever. Let's say you're a Muslim in the mosque and you lead a group of people to implement whatever it is that you do. Let's say it's not religious stuff, it is social engagement. You have a social club, a dance club, and you lead the group of dancers or gym or whatever you do. You are a leader, and you have to tell your story of leadership. You don't necessarily need to tell the story of how you make people dance well, no, but you need to tell the story of how you make sure that there is harmony between different dancers. Make sure that competition leads to success instead of competition leading to rancor and chaos. You can also tell a leadership story of how you solved problems, how you solved chaos when two dancers are fighting. How did you solve it? So when we talk about leadership stories, it's not about you being a CEO or you being some leader. No. We're talking about everyday living. How can you relate leadership story into that? And I do that well, and this wins me scholarships. And then the other one is getting coached. The truth is this: so many of us have the capacity to apply for scholarships, apply for opportunities, and win it without by doing their own. Even almost all of us can do it without doing your research. Sorry, you must do your research. You must do your research, but without getting coached by another person, you can win a scholarship. You can win an opportunity. But when you have someone who coaches you, someone who mentors you, this person has done 80% of the work for you. And that 80% is the research. This coach has done the research already for you. All you now need to do is to engage in accurate action. So getting coached solves 80% of the problem for you, makes it 80% easier. It's not easy. That's simple truth. It's not easy. I applied for the Swedish Institute Scholarship in 2020 for the first time, and I won it. I applied once and I won it. That doesn't mean that somebody who applied 5 times before winning it, that doesn't mean I'm smarter than them. But it's just because I have done the research and I've done these prerequisites. If you also have a coach, it makes it way, way easier. But for you to win, you don't necessarily need a coach, but coaches make it easy for you. So if you have an opportunity of being coached, grab it, jump and embrace it, run and grab it, like go for it. But if that opportunity is not there, please do the research, you win, you can do it. Then the last part of my step 2 is to get reviewed. There's something about being reviewed. It's you can use proofread. Because I'm in communications, I do a lot of writing. Even I have a newsletter where I send people emails every week. You can also join my newsletter if you go to, I'll put it in the comments part, so you can, or in the description part, you can join my newsletter. Or if you just simply go to my website, www.amaraizu.com/coaching, you can register and join to my newsletter. I send people newsletters every week. Information that they would need, information that is relevant to them. Now, sometimes I write, I review what I wrote. I read it, I go through it, and everything is perfect. Every sentence is wonderful. I will take some time, I will check it again. Everything is great. I wrote well. Then I will send it out. 2 days later, I will go and check it again. Oh my God, look at a mistake. Then I start wondering, where did this mistake come from? How? I mean, I checked this thing. How did I skip this? Where? How? So getting reviewed should not just be done by yourself. Get your friend, get your coach, get your mentor, get your colleague, get any human being you know who has the knowledge, the basic knowledge to review your work. After doing an application, give it to somebody to look at it. Tell the person, tell me what you think. If you are the person giving this award, will you award it to me? If you're the person in the committee for the scholarship, will you give me the scholarship? Let someone review your work. This will give you, we identify the things you will never ever think about, things you don't think of. And this is mainly the step 2 engagement I do. So I will go to sharing some tips under this step 2. So let me share some tips under this step 2 of what I do. The first tip is when it comes to reference and recommendation. Now, you want to apply for a scholarship for PhD or a scholarship for masters or a scholarship for, or whatever scholarship for, maybe a fellowship or a conference. And they ask you to write a reference letter, to submit a reference letter. And they will ask you to submit a reference letter from university or from your workplace. The truth is this: if you tell your boss at your workplace, or you tell your client, or you tell, because a reference letter, you can use your client. Let's say you are the boss, you can use your client to write a reference letter for you, or you get your university lecturers or HOD or professor to write for you. The truth is this: because these people are busy, they don't have the time to start researching. Oh, this person is applying for PhD in this place, in Oxford University. Let me go and research about Oxford. Or this person is applying for PhD in communication. Let me go and research about communication in Oxford. No referee does that. They don't have the time. So at the end of the day, referee will write a reference for you, good reference, but the reference is not strong for your application. How do you solve this problem? There's only one way. Let me lower my voice and let me tell you a secret. The secret to solving this problem is this: write your reference yourself. Write your recommendation yourself. After writing it, now send it to the recommender or the referee. After writing it yourself, now send it to your CEO or to your professor or to your lecturer and tell them that you are applying for this and this is something you've written for them to edit and sign. Tell them to edit it and sign. You are achieving 2 things by doing this. You have done the research, you understand your application better than they do, and you have written a perfect recommendation for yourself. Then in this recommendation, you are now giving it to the right referee, to the recommender, to look at it, review it. So this person can now do a second proofreading, remove mistakes that you probably made. Let's say language mistakes, let's say diction mistakes, let's say grammar mistakes that you did not see. This person will now remove it. That's one advantage. The second advantage is that if you wrote something they don't like, they will remove it. Let's say you want a recommendation, you want your CEO to sign a recommendation for you. Then in your recommendation letter, you wrote, oh, I am the best staff. I have been the best staff for the past 2 years. And you give it to your CEO. And your CEO does not like it. You know, and maybe you lied. Maybe the CEO does not like that. He cannot sign that because that's not fact. What he would now do, he will not outrightly remove that. He will either call you, tell you, I don't like what you wrote here, what is here. How can it be changed? That gives you an opportunity to edit that part and make it to become more factual. Or by his own capability and authority, he will edit it and write, sometimes he has shown that he is a very wonderful and good staff. He might not call you the best staff, but he will not call you a wonderful or good staff. You know, give you something maybe lower, but he will not take you to the bottom. And that's an advantage. And then the person will sign. And it is your reference, perfect recommendation. Now, the second tip I want to give you is you need to communicate to who is in charge, unless in the application you are told not to contact them. If in the application you are told not to contact the organizers or the committee, maybe to avoid biasness, then you shouldn't. But there's something you need to know. People who review scholarships are people just like you. They are human beings, they are educated, they understand what the organization wants. Now, it is very, very good and an advantage for you if you contact them and hear from them. Let them tell you what they're looking out for. They will respond in many cases. Contact them, reach out to them, let them explain to you again what is already on their website. They'll be glad to do so. And that will give you a very, it will just put you at an advantage that you didn't think you would have. Maybe advantage in research and knowledge. So these tips are contacting the committee or the organizers in many cases helps you understand the problem they want to solve better. It really helps you better. Even for the Swedish Institute Scholarship, I held a webinar with the formal SI manager, the person who was managing the whole scholarship. I had an interview with this person. You just go to my YouTube, check it out, and hear him out. Hear from the person's mouth. So the next thing is you have to use real life examples. In your essay, in your
Hey, what happened?
essay, in your personal statements or statement of purpose or motivation letter or anything you're writing, in any of them, it is important if you use real life examples. It's important if you use real life examples. Of course, we understand what is real life examples, but there is now a very important part of using real life examples. It is as important as whatever you write, either in statements or in wherever you write it. And that is using statistics and data and dates. You're writing a recommendation letter. You're writing, or not a recommendation letter, it could be a recommendation letter, or you're writing a motivation letter or a reference letter or a statement of purpose or personal statement, whatever it is called, or an essay. And you want to write about your experiences as a leader. It is best to explain these experiences by saying, on the 5th of March, 2023, I led 5 young Africans to learning about climate change in a workshop handled by ABC, handled by ABC at Abuja, Nigeria, or at Lagos, Nigeria. You know, you use dates, you use data, you use, this statistics makes content more, gives confidence in content. Statistics gives, if someone is doing a content, it makes it more believable, gives it life, makes it real, makes examples, these real life examples, makes it, yeah, this actually happened on this date, on this location, on this place. And after this event of training, 5 out of 10 candidates became experts in climate action, whatever the case may be. Using statistics is an advantage you cannot forsake, not at all. And that's the last of the tip I have to give in this part. And that takes me to my last step, which I take and which gives me opportunities. And this step, I've specifically taken this step in getting admission and have specifically taken this step in getting PhD. So it's step 3. And step 3 is called follow up. Follow up. Step 3, follow up. So what are we talking about by follow up? I will stem my explanation from what I last said. People who handle scholarships or the committee who select who wins what award are human beings, professionals, experts, just like every other expert you know in your office or where you are. Now, for you to win whatever opportunity you're applying for, you need to think like them. You need to see things that like them. If you did not get a scholarship, or if you did not get a fellowship you applied for, or a PhD for masters you applied for, or even for bachelor's, it does not mean that you are not smart enough. It does not mean that you wrote nonsense. It simply means that you failed to understand what these committee people or these professionals or these experts are looking out for. That's what it simply means. So how do you stand at an advantage? It is through, 1, reaching out to them before submitting your application, and secondly, follow up after application. So let me give you, I'll just give an example of what I did. This is a real life example. This is not something I created. Let me give you a real life example of what I did for someone. I was coaching a student to get admission in Sweden last year. And this is what we did. This is for admission. Now, this student wanted to study a program in fashion. But this student studied in bachelor's degree. This student wanted to do a master's program in fashion management, something like that, in Sweden. But my student studied linguistics in bachelor's degree. But the requirement to get admission into fashion management is that you must have done a bachelor's degree in either economics, business admin, fashion marketing, or some of those kind of programs. So either you have done the program in business or administration or economics, you cannot get admission into fashion management. This student had bachelor's degree in linguistics, way off from business. So what did we do? We looked at all the requirements, studied the transcript, saw where she failed, where she's not eligible, because she was not eligible in this case. We saw where she's not eligible. We found out that she's not eligible only by degree, but by CV, she's eligible. But by her experiences, she's eligible. But now the problem is this: the university in Sweden does not require you to submit a CV. They only require you to submit bachelor's. So what did we do? We created a follow-up channel. Now the channel is this: I encourage her to apply. She applied for fashion management. We sent a message to members of the admission committee. Admission committees in Sweden are usually made up of, the program coordinator or manager or the departmental head and some few professors or lecturers. And there's always a secretary. So we contacted the head of the program. We sent her an email. We told her the situation. We told her that we have applied for this, but she doesn't have the bachelor's, that she's not eligible. But we explained to her that she has the CV. My student had 5 years experience as a tailor, as a fashion designer. But the problem is that to get a master's program, they don't require your CV. That was the major issue. So how do we prove to this university that she has 4 or 5 years experience in fashion designing, even though her bachelor's is in linguistics. We set up the meeting. They had decided to agree to meet us. We had a Zoom call. In the meeting, we discussed how we are qualified for this, discussed why we are the best, why she's the best student to be admitted. We discussed why, if she's not admitted, the university is the one losing, not her. We explained to the university that she's the one losing, that they are the one losing if they don't admit her. As I'm telling you, the university, look at what happened too. If you have applied for Swedish admission before, you find out that when you apply, they start reviewing your application. And then they can tell you in progress, disqualified or whatever. So she applied and it was disqualified. She was disqualified, that she's not eligible. But after that meeting, within 2 days, the disqualification was removed and she got admission. So this is where the role follow-up plays. Follow-up gives you an opportunity to explain your credibility and your credits. The credits your transcripts could not say. Let's say you came out with a third class or you came out with a pass, you can get a PhD. You came out with the worst grade in bachelor's degree, you can still get a master's scholarship. You can get a master's scholarship with the lowest degrees, you can. But the major hurdle is, how will you get admission? So you need to engage in the right step, the right flow-up path. For the same thing for PhD. PhD is highly competitive. Let's say there is a 2 PhD slot in the department. 200 people are applying for 2 slots. There's only just 2 slots. Some departments take 1 PhD in 2 years. Some departments take 3 PhD in 5 years. Some take 3 PhD in 1 year, depending on the funding they have. You have to be very intentional in this follow-up, and that is the way to go. For a PhD, for admission, or for any of these parts. And these are the 3 steps I take that gives me these opportunities. So at this point, I will just quickly share the general timelines of scholarships, admissions, and fellowships. So the I got SI scholarship in 2020, and I did a master's program 2020 to 2022. While I was still a master's student in 2022, I got a PhD scholarship. I have not finished my master's, I got a PhD scholarship. And now I'm sharing with you the timelines. Generally, this is the timeline, the same timeline all over the world. For SI scholarship, in October, every October, the admissions portal opens. Every October, the admissions portal opens. By the same October or November, the Swedish Institute releases a list of eligible master's programs. Not all master's programs are eligible. They will release the list that is eligible. By November, they also release a list of documents that you should fill, either reference letters and the rest. By January, the portal opens. By February, it closes. By April, results are announced. By May, if you got the stuff, you process your permits, and by August, you are in Sweden. Many other scholarships follow the same timeline. Chevening Scholarship, Commonwealth Scholarship, Orange, that of Holland, the Australian ones, the ones in the US. Many scholarships all over the world use likely the same timeline. So that is where I wrote general timeline over here. July to October, every year, admissions and scholarships open. Between July to October, there are over 100 scholarships available. Between July and October, every year, there are more than 100 scholarships available. They open between December and April. Results are announced. You see people celebrating whatever they got. May, June is usually time to process visas. By August, a lot of travels, because new academic season always starts in fall or autumn. August, September, that's the new academic season. And then for fellowships, there are fellowships all year round. There are 1-month fellowships. there are, for example, I applied for this 1 month fellowship before. I don't know if you know about Mandela Washington Fellowship. It's a 1 month, a 1 month plus fellowship in the US. I applied for it. I passed stage 1, went to the second stage for interview. At the second stage, it didn't progress. I know if I apply for it now, I know I'm very sure that I will get it. I applied, this was in 2018 or 19. There are fellowships for 2 weeks. There are fellowships for 1 year. There are fellowships for 2 years, and so on. Now, same thing with PhD. PhDs is also all year round. Some PhDs follow the regular academic timeline, where they open July to October. But many other PhDs all year round. You can get a PhD in January, you can get in February, you can get in March, you can get just all year round PhD in many cases. And for those of us who have been asking me questions about PhD in Europe, it's a bit different when it comes to Canada or America or Australia or some other part of the world. Now, in many European countries, PhD is seen as a job. So if you get a PhD, you automatically, it's like you got a job in the university. You will be teaching or you'll be researching in the university while you're getting your PhD, and you are paid salary as someone who's doing PhD. So that's the way PhD works. So if you apply for PhD in Europe, treat it as you would treat like someone who is applying for a job. In many PhDs, you don't need application fees. You just apply, and also know that you are competing with so many people, just the way you compete in applying for jobs. So let's say you're applying for PhD in Sweden. Just tell yourself you're applying for a job. When you get the PhD, you'll be paid, your salary will be, you'll be given a salary scale, and then you'll be part of the system. That's how it works mainly in Europe. And if you go to the vacancy page of every university, you see the PhDs they have. You can choose what's available. Just go to the vacancy of different universities in Europe. You see the PhDs available. And in other cases, you can also pay for your own PhD. Let's say you're not looking for scholarship, you just want to do PhD, pay for it. It's also allowed. It's also, of course, the opportunity for that. You can do that. In America, there are even more. In the Canada, there is more, and the rest. And also in many institutions in Canada or in America or in the UK or Australia, once you get a PhD, you automatically get funding. So you don't need to apply for a different scholarship after applying for admission for PhD. Once you get admission for PhD in so many places in the world, you automatically get a fully funded scholarship, or a funded scholarship, or funded, or you just know it's in different cases. So at this point, it's time to take questions for those of us who have questions. But I got some questions from the mail, so I'll quickly run this. I got so many questions in my email, so I couldn't take all of them. So I took the very first few that sent to me first. So I did not edit it. This is exactly the way they sent it to me to my email. I will just read them out, and of course, we try to answer it together. So the first email I got, which was a question, came from Femi. And Femi says, is it true that it is easier to get admitted for a PhD in American universities and that they usually come with scholarship? Oh, I just answered this now. Well, out of how easy it is, I mean, I don't know what your measurement of easy, what you mean by easy, but I believe that it's easy. But it's easy doesn't mean that you just apply anyway you get it. You can apply for 5 times before you get it. People can apply for many, many times. They'll be getting rejection over and over again. So it depends what you mean by easy. But of course, you can get it easily, and most of them comes with scholarship. If you get a PhD, in many cases, once you get the PhD admission, you're automatically getting a scholarship in many cases. But in other cases, no, you don't. You have to pay your fees. So you just do your research and find out. Now I have another question from Echo. I hope I got your name right. He says, I want to study master's degree in Sweden, public administration, leadership, and digitalization. I already have a master's in public administration, but this program offers me more insight into public administration and especially digitalization. Will this in any way reduce, will this in any way reduce my chances of getting admission and a scholarship? No. If you want to get a scholarship or admission for a second master's, the first master's is not a disadvantage, it's rather an advantage. You can do first master's, second master's, it is not a disadvantage at all. So it will not make your chances bad. That you already have a master's and want to do another master's will not make your chances bad. No. Then we'll go over to the one from Richmond. Richmond says, my question is, which SDG do accounting and administration fall under? I'm asking because of the CV and my work experience is auditing. I work for Ghana Audit Service, the supreme audit institution in Ghana. Well, depending on what you do, the truth is that all SDGs are interconnected and interrelated. You could be a doctor, and even though you work in good health and well-being, your work can also be related to poverty. Your work could also be related to other issues, gender. As a doctor, your work could also be related something with somebody who is into auditing and administration. So your primary SDGs could be something else. It could be education. It could be just go study the SDG. If you start studying the SDGs right now, you find out that SDGs, you have goal 1. Under goal 1, you have targets 1 point this, target 2 point this, target 1 point this. You see that under one goal, you could have 5 different goals. Under one big goal, you will have 3, 4, 5 different sub goals and targets. So maybe your work is only just one target out of the overall goal. It is your research to do, I can't give you an answer off my head. So we have another one from Michael. Can a 5-page CV be used to apply for admission in Sweden? Wow. 5-page CV. Nobody writes a 5-page CV. In everything, if you cannot summarize a CV in 2 pages, it's too boring. From the committee, I won't read a 5-page CV. But it doesn't mean you can, yes, you can use it and you can use it and apply, of course. But I mean, put yourself in the shoe of the person reviewing the application. Why are you giving me a 5-page CV? It shouldn't be more than 2 pages, please, or 3 pages. Or 4, they'll give you instruction. You'll be given an instruction. Then we have another question from Dennis. Dennis says, how do I get a PhD in Sweden or other European countries? What are the European countries that do not require an IELTS score for MSc PhD? Will I be needing a West course by course evaluation for both my MBBS certificate and MPH degree before getting admission to the US? Okay, these are many questions in one. First question, how can I get a PhD in Sweden and other European countries? By applying. That's simple, the only way to get it. By applying. How can you apply? Really making research on how you can apply. Sometimes you can apply by sending a cold email to professors who have funding. Some professors want grants, millions of dollars for research, and they want to employ PhD students for their research. So if you apply, you send them an email, if you find out that, oh, this professor has the funding, you send them an email, you tell them that you have interest in what they're doing, and you prove it, a professor can actually give you scholarship. So the simple way is by applying. What are the European countries that do not require IELTS? I don't have it in my head. So this is a product of research. For Sweden requires you to write English exam, but it depends to where you studied for your bachelor's. And it depends to the country of your citizenship. If you studied in Nigeria, we know that Nigeria's official language is English, you studied in Nigeria, then you don't need to write English exam, you don't need any IELTS score. But if you studied in Cameroon, or you studied, somewhere else, in Tunisia, in Egypt, then you need English test. So that's about that. Then will I be needing a West course by course evaluation for both my MBBS certificate and degree in the US. Every university tells you the instructions, but US is mainly required, mainly in Canada. But I'm not ruling out the East need in the US. So if you see what you want to apply for, make your research and you know if you can. And now the last question from here is from Onyechi. Onyechi is asking me, did you get any rejection? If so, how do you stay positive? Okay, yes. I applied for Swedish Institute Scholarship once, and I got it once. I applied for a PhD, and I got it. I applied for fellowships, and I got it. And I've enjoyed so many funded opportunities. But now, did I ever get a rejection? The truth is that I only got 5 scholarships, but I've gotten over 30 rejections, more than 30 rejections. I have gotten 5 successfully, but I have more than 30. That is too small. I have more than 50 rejections in the past 5 years. I have more than 50 rejections in the past 5 years. So how do I deal with it? How do I stay positive? You stay positive because you have the goal. What is the goal? The goal is to win it. So if you have not won it, why will you be negative? You stay positive, you're going to win it. You believe that you can do it. You get a coach, you get a mentor. Sometimes getting somebody who guides you helps you go through this. You get a coach, you get a mentor, you join a community of scholars, you get to know that you have to work harder. You get to see other people who got it after they applied the 7th time. You'll be motivated to do more. So you shouldn't be disappointed. You rather tell yourself, okay, this didn't work now. What is the solution? I work harder. I do more. I put more energy. People don't usually come out to tell their failure stories. Everybody's telling their success stories. Even this webinar is about my success story. It's not about my failure stories. But okay, for example, I told you I applied for Mandela Washington Fellowship. I passed the first stage. The first stage is the written application. I did it. I passed the first stage. The second stage, this was either in 2018 or 2019. The second stage was interview. I went for the interview. Then in the interview, one American, two Nigerians, and one other person, I don't know where the person is from, 4 persons. And they were in a panel. It was a physical interview. And they were asking me questions. How about this? How about this? How about this? And they were writing. And as they were asking me the questions, I was answering the questions. I was bombarding them with answers. I was so confident. When I left the interview, I told myself that I've gotten it. I was so sure that I did well in the interview. I was so sure that I would be selected for Mandela Washington Fellowship. Then the result came out. I was not selected. Just imagine how I would feel when you felt so sure that you've done your best and you will get it. So, there are so many rejections, but you just keep pushing, and that's mainly it. At this point, I will go over to sharing how you can reach out to me. So this is the major ways you can reach out to me. For those of us that want to contact me, who wants to reach out to me. So you can reach out to me through Telegram, you can chat me up through Telegram, and I will respond to you on this link. On Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter. On Facebook, you can also follow me on Facebook. And on LinkedIn, I also have my LinkedIn profile. And on my YouTube, you get to see lots and lots of videos I've done for topics like this. I also get to see lifestyle videos about living abroad and stuff like that. So you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Of course, that encourages me. If I see, thousands of people are subscribed and they find my content interesting and valuable. So I appreciate that. So if you can subscribe to my YouTube, that would be wonderful. Follow me on social media, reach out to me. This is my email, and this is my personal website, my personal blog. I have some publications that you can have, some podcasts. I have some content. My CV is there, but you can always reach out to me in many ways, social media or email. In many ways, you can reach out to me. And at this point, I want to say thank you so much for listening and for joining this webinar. And have a wonderful time, and I wish you success.